afternoon, everybody, or good morning, or good evening, depending on where in the world you are watching this. I must say, this is a real privilege. We have got a really, really special guest with us today. It is the one, it is the only Mighty Mouse himself, Mr. Demetrious Johnson. Demetrious, thank you so much for taking the time today. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me, man. I enjoying my beautiful day in Washington State and can't complain.
Hey, it's great. Absolutely, I'm sure it is. So, Demetrius, just to get started, I'm going to take a very interesting starting point here because I actually want to talk about someone who I had the real privilege of interviewing not that long ago. And it's actually your main sparring partner, Mr. James Yang. Now, James had an unbelievable performance. For those of you who somehow haven't seen it, at One Championship Revolution, and he won his debut in very, very convincing fashion. And whenever I asked James about you, especially, he could not have sung your praises any higher, and it was very, very good to see. So, as I mentioned, James made his MMA debut recently, and I suppose my first question is, what did you make of it, DJ?
It was good. He went out there, finished his opponent, and it was a great pro debut. It's a good way to make a good impression on your debut to get that finish. So I'm very happy and ecstatic for him. And he walked away with no injuries. That's always my biggest thing is like, get in there, fight and compete. You get out of it with no injuries, Gucci.
Most definitely, most definitely. Sort of continuing briefly on the line of James himself. Obviously, as I said, everybody was incredibly impressed with his debut that saw it. Quite a lot of people did, thankfully. How far do you think James can go in One Championship and subsequently professional mixed martial arts as a whole?
Yeah, I mean, the sky's the limit. The guy's still young. He's, he's a very, very good, good learner, very open to learn. And, it's all about how healthy can he stay. If he stays healthy, then, you just got to keep on competing and see how well you do against the best in the division.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. Absolutely. So, sort of in terms of, again, in that coaching sort of side of your career, I suppose, what advice do you give to your young teammates as well as James? Is there any particular approach when it comes to a particular fight that you take with them?
Say again, you kind of bug out. So my coaching skills, is there a certain way I approach the fight?
Pretty much, yeah. Whenever you're coaching your fighters, how do you sort of go about it? Are you like a very hands-on coach, or are you sort of a bit of everything?
I'm more of a teammate than a coach. I feel like I'm more of a teammate because coaching is something that I am not in that mindset yet. When I was over there, I'm coaching him, but I'm also coaching him in a standpoint as a teammate. We've been training with each other for a very, very long time, so I kind of know what he's good at, and I kind of know where he is going to have to work on to get better at. But we go out there and just execute. We work together. It's a partnership.
Yeah, totally. It really, really is, and that's something that came across very strongly when I talked to James, actually. So, absolutely, yes. Now, DJ, we actually are going to talk about you. Obviously, that's why we're here, and that's why everybody else is here too, ultimately. So we're sort of bringing it back to the present. Your camp right now for the fight against Rodtang, how's it going? How's it looking going into this fight?
It's doing great. We're second day of training camp, feeling good. And it's about just staying healthy and being sharp on December 5th.
Yeah, obviously it definitely is. So absolutely. You're headlining the 10th anniversary card for One Championship. Is that something of particular importance or significance to you?
Yeah, it's a 10-year anniversary. So I'm grateful and honored to have the opportunity to go out there and compete against a guy like Rodtang in a special rules fight. So I'm just looking very much forward to it.
Yeah, and anybody who I've talked to about it, they feel nothing but the same way. So it's great to hear, especially from you personally. One thing I do have to bring up, and unfortunately, it's never the best thing to bring up to a fighter. Your most recent fight against Mariah, unfortunately, you did lose. How do you feel reflecting on that fight? Are you sort of over it now, or do you continue to revisit it? How do you feel about that fight?
I'm over it. You know, sorry, I got 3 kids.
Don't worry, it's fine. It's
Um,
fine. I watch your streams. It's 100%.
I'm fine. I'm fine. You know, it's fights are fights. You know, losses happen. Does it suck? Yeah, but at the same time, you know, I'm over it. You know, I got a lot of good things going on in my life and in my career, and you just move forward, man.
Yeah, absolutely. So the next thing I want to talk about is more specifically your upcoming fight, the special rules bout with Rodtang. Now, the last time that you spoke to us, and by us I mean LowKick MMA specifically, the last time you spoke to us, you seemed very apprehensive that a fight like this would ever happen. What in particular changed in that time for this to become a reality?
Go ahead.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Sorry, I just cut out there for a second, so it's just catching up.
No worries. No worries.
Right. Thank you very much for that. So what was your reaction to one proposing this hybrid fight? Because this is obviously something that hasn't really been done in a long, long time, if ever, probably since Pride days. So how did you feel when one actually came up with this idea?
It was awesome. I was excited when you offered it to me, and you know, to be on the 1X show is kind of like the perfect because it's going to bring a lot of buzz and a lot of people are super excited about the fight, and I am too.
Yeah, I mean that came across very obviously when they announced it as well. It was really, really good to see. Just in a brief segue on that, if you don't mind, does it feel special to you that one championship came to you and offered a hybrid fight? Because there's obviously they realistically they could have offered it to a few fighters, and yet you always seem to be the one fighter that was most likely to have this kind of fight. Did it feel special to you at all that they came to you and offered you this?
It's awesome that they did. I'm glad they came to me, and you know, they knew I was going to accept it, and you know, I'm just grateful. But you know, it's what they had me on the roster to do, is to have fun fights like this.
Yeah, for sure. I can promise you personally, it really, really is. So going into this fight with Rod Tang, sort of a breakdown of round by round, because obviously the rules alternate between the rounds. What's your game plan roughly for the first round? Are you going to march out and match Rod Tang, or is it just to sort of try and survive and see out the round? What's your thinking going into that?
Fight. I think the best way to do it is to fight. Go out there and compete. You know, obviously Rodtang is a Muay Thai specialist, but I got to go out there and compete and just do what I do best, and that's just be dynamic and fight.
Yeah, I agree with you. So going into round two, obviously, assuming that it goes into round two, that's really where it becomes your wheelhouse and your game plan because that's where mixed martial arts rules kick in. In round two, is the goal to get Rod Tang to the mat straight away and immediately rob him of that Muay Thai advantage?
Well, obviously that is the goal, but it's not gonna be easy. You know, I'm gonna do it strategically, smart, and you know, once I get on the ground, start working my submission game.
Yeah, I mean, there's so many examples to obviously back that up. So you're absolutely right. And one thing that I really wanted to ask, and I'm really curious to get your opinion on this because by far you're considered one of the most well-rounded mixed martial artists that there has ever been, and probably that we'll ever see again, realistically. When it comes to Rob Tang, do you think he can do anything in the next few months to basically deal with you in round two? Or do you think for him he has to get this done in the Muay Thai rounds?
No, I think there's something to do. I mean, he's an athlete, right? And he's an athlete. He's been fighting for his whole entire life. So, like, can he sit maybe with the triangle or armbar? No, there's no way he'll be able to do that. But to know the basics, not to turtle and do certain things, you can find out and learn that within 9 to 8 weeks. I believe in his skill set.
Absolutely. I actually really appreciate that as an answer because a lot of people would write that off straight away. So props to you for that, especially. When we consider these types of fights in terms of mixed rule sets and the hybrid nature of them, what's your thinking towards it? I mean, obviously you've got this to think about already, but would you like to compete in more of these types of fights in the future?
Yeah, if they offer it to me, if I'm in the right mind space and ready to do it, yeah, I'd love to. But right now this is what's on the list, and I think I have to get back to mixed martial arts and then go from there.
Yeah, absolutely. Sort of shooting off of that. Whenever we consider the title picture right now, obviously, as I said a minute ago, you've already got this fight to look forward to, which is already one of the biggest fights of the year in any organization. After that, do you always keep one eye on the title picture, and is that on the horizon for you perhaps next year too?
If I work my way back up to that point, then yeah, I'm all about going back down the ladder, work my way back up. Those other athletes who are on win streaks, Yuya Wakamatsu's on 3-fight win streak. Kara Akhmatov has a win over Adriano. I mean, they're 1-1. So for me, it's like do this fight and then come home, chill, and then see what's next.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. One of the thing that I got to ask you in terms of the category of what's next is, and again, I have my own opinions about this, but this is about you and what you think. Obviously, over the last couple of years, we've had this phenomena, if you will, of YouTube boxing. And a couple of sort of media outlets in different corners of the combat sports industry have linked your name to it in bits and pieces. Is competing in that something that you'd be interested in perhaps in a couple of years or so?
We'll see what happens. I mean, still 35. I got a long time left in mixed martial arts, and then we'll see where I'm at when I'm done. When I'm ready to call it good, call it quits.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. Because you've obviously still got so much left to give in the main picture. It's just curious because obviously no one can ever say definitively what you're thinking because it's obviously still such a bit away. So thank you for clarifying that more than anything. So going on to by far the biggest thing perhaps that's happened in your career, which is of course being the UFC flyweight champion, a title that you held, I think, for 6 years, which is just unbelievable. The biggest fight that we've got coming up, probably going to be one of the fights of the year again, is Davidson Figueiredo and Brandon Moreno Part 3. What are your thoughts on that, DJ? How do you see that fight going?
I think it's going to be a good fight. I mean, it's going to, come down to see who's going to be able to execute the game plan. Obviously in the second fight, Brandon was able to get his, game plan going. He looked sharp. He was quick on the feet. And, Figueiredo just couldn't keep up. So, I'll be watching that fight as a fan and see what happens.
Yeah, I mean, I suppose we all will definitely. Just sort of branching off of that, because again, this is another thing I'm really curious to get your thoughts on, especially in my opinion, when it came to the fight that was on the feet. I don't think anybody thought we'd see a fighter as feared on the feet really since you left the division. And with someone like Davidson Figueiredo, we had a guy who looked like he could knock out anybody with one punch. Whenever you saw Davidson come up to the title picture after you left, was that a fight that you could see happening one day? And whenever you see a fighter like Davidson, how do you think you would cope with that?
Yeah, I think anybody that was in that division that I could see fighting gets potentially. And, someone who has a lot of power. It's not the first time. John Dodson had a lot of power when he hit people. And, you just got to be strategic and dynamic and not try to exchange with someone who has that type of power.
Yeah, definitely. Couldn't have said that any better. When we consider the flyweight picture as a whole, and I sort of mention again here, whenever you left and went to one championship, ever since you've been gone, no one's made the title their own, and no one has been anywhere near as dominant the way that you've been, because the title's kind of like bounced off of people's hands from one fighter to the next to the next. Do you think anybody can ever replicate what you did, especially in your division?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I think Amanda Nunes, and I think Valentina Shevchenko, Kamaru Usman. Those guys have been those athletes have been very dominant. As the flyweight division, it's just going to take time to see who's going to be ahead of everyone. It's a very, very fast, dynamic division.
Yeah, it really, really is, especially in your division. I think there's just so many people coming up that it will be a long time before we see it organize itself in that way. One other question, especially in terms of the flyweight division, the fact that no one's matched your reign or come anywhere even remotely close to matching your reign, do you think when we consider perhaps in the next 5 or 10 years or so roughly, do you think that'll make your reign as king of the flyweight division even more impressive? The fact that it's been harder for someone to sustain any kind of length as being champion?
Oh yeah, of course. Yeah, I'm sure it will. But I'm not worried about that. I'll let people decide how they feel about my reign.
Definitely, definitely. So, DJ, a couple of huge fights that we've got coming up towards the end of the year. And basically, what we're doing with all of our interviews is we really want to get people's opinions and views on how they think these fights are going to go out. And I'm especially intrigued to hear your views on these. Two big fights that we've got coming up are Dustin Poirier and Charles Oliveira for the UFC's lightweight championship in December. And we have Cyril Gane and Francis Ngannou coming up for the interim heavyweight title. How do you think these fights are going to go? How do you see them playing out?
I think when it comes to Dustin Poirier versus Charles Olivier, Charles has got to be dynamic. He's a better grappler, better on the ground, and he has the reach advantage. So if he can be dynamic, get him to the ground, submit him, he wins the belt. He retains the belt. Dustin Poirier, when his shit hits the fan and things get rough and tough and the adversity kicks in, he always prevails. And I think that's how he'll win the fight, is just being grittier, tougher, and getting in those brawls.
Absolutely. And in terms of Cyril Gane, Francis Ngannou, what do you think?
They used to be training partners. I think Cyril Gane's just got to be faster and more dynamic on the feet. Francis is he hits hard, but he's kind of got that power that he relies on. So Cyril Gane's just got to be a dynamic.
Yeah, I agree with you. And I actually was talking about this with someone as well. I don't think we've seen as quick and dynamic a heavyweight in Cyril Gane really since the days of Cain Velasquez. That's why I rate him so highly, and that's why I think he could really do the business there. So to get your views on that, I really do appreciate it, DJ, because it's so well respected as well, your views on these things too. So DJ, my last question for you is this, and it's always a bit of an intriguing question to ask because you're nowhere near the end of your career yet. I'd say you probably still have quite a while to go before you even consider it. But when the day comes that you eventually do retire and you reach your sort of natural conclusion to your career, how do you want to be remembered by combat sports fans and especially mixed martial arts fans? In your mind, what is the legacy of Demetrious Mighty Mouse Johnson?
Humbled, a hard worker, very dynamic, very he thinks outside of the box, and he enjoyed the ride. Like when I joined the mixed martial arts, it was never to be a champion. I did it because I had passion, it was fun, it was something to do after work, and he turned it into his career. So that's what I wanted to be remembered by. Everybody else can make up their own mind.
Absolutely. And just branching off that really quickly, because you were so dominant as flyweight champion, and because you've had so many wins throughout your career, I know this is probably a very hard question to ask, but I feel like I have to ask it. Do you have a particular performance or a particular win that you appreciate more than the others, or that you enjoy watching back more than the others?
I would say all of them, man. I feel like all of my fights have a special place in my career, my heart. Like you say, the first Dotson fight, the adversity, what's his name, Kyoto Horiguchi, the very last second armbar, the second Dotson fight, just how easy it was. The Chris Curry also hit with the flying knee, finished with a Kimura. the Friday night bonuses. I mean, all of them were great, you know?
Definitely. And for me personally, I think I have to put the Ray Borg win up there really highly as well. The suplex straight into an armbar. I mean, that was just special.
Another one.
Another one indeed. Well, Demetrious, I have to say those are all the questions that I've got for you. This has been nothing short of a privilege, and I cannot tell you how much I appreciate your time today. Ladies and gentlemen, you don't even need me to sign off for this because I'm sure you do it already. But follow Demetrious Johnson on all of his social media platforms. On Instagram, it's at Mighty, because I know that because I follow you. On Facebook, Demetrious Mighty Mouse Johnson. Twitter, I think, is the same as well. And if you're on Twitch, which you should be, please go and follow his channel as well, because it is fantastic to watch day in and day out. Ladies and gentlemen, that is it for me. From me to one of the greatest of all time, Demetrious Johnson, it has been a pleasure. Thank you so much.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate you.